Hey YouTube, this is Chris again with another one of Tim and Chris's how-to videos. So in this video I'm going to show you how to take an image like this and turn it into something like this, giving it that cracked skin effect. This is really fun to do, and believe it or not, it's really not that hard. I'm going to take you step by step. So let's get started. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where I got this image from. And I got it from Pixabay. And I'll put this link in the description if you want to download this and follow along with me. Next you'll need a paint texture, a cracked paint texture. I just typed in cracked paint and I got this texture. So grab yourself a texture and get those downloads and put them in Photoshop and let's get started. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this group so that I can start from scratch here. Now I'm going to grab my texture and I'm going to move it in to my image here. And I'm going to click on Control T or Command T, I believe, on a Mac. And I am going to hold Shift key while dragging the corners to make this image even. Alright, and you don't need to drag the whole over the whole image, just enough to cover, her face. With this layer selected, I'm going to drop the opacity a little bit so I can see the model behind the texture. That way I can move this around, and if you click Control T, you can spin it around or move it however you want. But I think it looks okay just like this, and I'm going to try and put this scar right here, right on her cheek, right about there. That looks pretty good. Okay. So with that done, now we're going to warp it. So with this layer still selected, we're going to click on, actually we're going to bring up the opacity all the way to 100, and we're going to click on Control and T. You know what, let's bring this opacity back down so we can see. Sorry about that. We're going to click Control T, and then we're going to right click in the middle of the image here, in the middle of the texture, and we're going to click on Warp. Now we're going to grab all four of these corners and we're just going to bring them in. And when you do that, pay attention to the face here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, so that it stays proportional. If you drag it up, it's skewing it and it's just not looking right. So grab it and pay attention to the face and make sure it's nice and even and proportional. And just grab all four corners and come in. You don't have to come all the way in, you just come in just a little bit. And we're just going to do the same here. Now we're going to grab these handles and we're going to bring these in a little bit. Also, keep in mind the image, the face, just try to keep everything proportional so that it looks like it's kind of taking the shape of her face here. That's exactly what we want. And we're going to take care of a lot of this with the layer mask here in a little bit. So you don't need to get it all the way down to, to her face. And that looks pretty good. We'll hit the check box. Okay, now we're going to bring the opacity all the way up to 100%. And now we're going to liquify. So we're going to go to Filter and Liquify. Now with this image here, sometimes it comes default like this. Just check this box for advanced mode. And with this, where it says Use, we're going to click on BG for background, our background layer. And you can put it in front or behind, doesn't matter. I'm going to put mine behind because it looks nicer and it'll help us out a little bit. I'm going to zoom in by clicking on Control and the plus key. Ooh, a little bit too far. I'm going to move this around by holding down the space key, left clicking and dragging. I can move this around. So now with the liquify tool, what we're going to do is we're just going to come in and we're just going to smush this around her face just a little bit. And then we're going to get more detailed. So we're going to be using the liquify tool a lot right here. And we're just going to get a larger brush, and I'm increasing the size of my brush using the bracket keys on my keyboard. And we're just going to start smushing it in, and just go around it and get the feel for this tool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go closer to her face, and the same thing applies. Um, try and keep it more proportional, excuse me, because if you bend it out too much, it's just not going to look good at all. So just kind of keep it a little proportional and follow the contours of her face. And that's all we're trying to do right now. We're trying just to make this look like it's matching all of the contours of her face here. And we're almost done with this part here. And like I said, don't worry about all this stuff around. We're going to take care of that with a layer mask. Okay. So now that we've done that, now if you can tell, we're going to drop the opacity just a little bit more, like this. Now if I zoom in a little bit, you can see the contours of her nose. Actually, I'm going to drop the opacity just a little bit more. We need to target these contours here and around her eyes and around her lips. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this tool called the freeze mask tool. And I'm going to decrease the size of my brush using the bracket keys. And all I'm going to do, this is going to turn this area red, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the contour of her nose, just like this. And what this is going to do is going to allow you to make changes all around this red masking, this red mask, and everything within this red mask will not be affected. So let's go back to our forward warp tool, and we're just going to start smudging in a little bit. And when we do that, I'm going to increase the size of my brush again. When we do that, everything in this red space will not be affected at all. So we're just going to bring it around. Just keep in mind, the contour that we're following. Just go right around the contour. And then we're going to go from the inside out and then this way out the other side. And we're going to do the same with the eyes. And the lips, we're just going to go ahead and freehand that. And then after that, we're going to touch it up just a little bit more. Okay, so now we've got the nose kind of squished a little bit to make it a little more noticeable of the curves. Now we're going to do her eyes, and we're going to click on the freeze mask tool again, and I'm going to reduce the size of my brush. And we're going to go right over her eyelid here, just like this. Let me do that once more. Just like that, and on this side. And again, we want these at this time just to stay the same. So then we're going to go back to our forward warp tool, increase the size of our brush using the bracket keys, and we're just going to come down following the curve of the contour of this mask, the red mask here. And we're going to tweak this, like I said, a little bit, and just a little bit. But right now we're just going to go right around these areas. Alright, now that that's done, I'm going to move it up. And we're just going to freehand the lips here. And we're just going to decrease the size of our brush just a little bit. And what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and create, as we drag up, we're going to try and create this contour on her lips. Bring it down. And from the inside of the lips, we're going to bring it out a little bit. And you just kind of click, 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 click. And bring it up a little more. Just to create that contour. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to click OK, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. And if we drop the opacity here, or actually if we change the blending mode from normal to multiply, we can see, we can see that it is following the contour of her nose, and we can see it puffing out a little bit here, and also the indents here on our lips. Oops. Okay, but we really need to define this a little bit more. So we're going to go put this back to normal, and we're going to go back to our liquify tool by going to filter and liquify, and we're going to go from all layers to background, and I'm going to increase this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, Control plus, and now what I need to do is I'm going to put a little bit more texture in, because now I want to see the texture. And now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of freehand this to complement the curves of her nose. And so we're going to make our brush a little bit bigger here, and we're just going to smush in a little bit, following the contours of her nose here. And then we'll back out, maybe a little bit less. We'll back out, Control minus, and you can see now, you can see a little bit more depth. And now you can see, what you need to do to work on this to get it right. And we're just smushing in just a little bit. And usually right here, right about here, the nose is the most critical. It looks like the lips are fine and the eyes are okay. I mean, we could work a little bit more on the lips here. But really we're concerned about the nose. And I'll push this up just a little bit right there. And let's have a look. And you can tell where you need to be. And just to follow the contours of her nose. And we're almost done here. Bring that out just a little bit. See where we're at. A little more right there. On this side. And I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so then we'll click OK. And now we're going to change this blending mode from normal to multiply. Now that we have this to multiply, we're going to apply our layer mask to it. And we're going to take care of all of this unwanted texture. So we're going to come down to the layer mask with our texture selected. Come down to our layer mask, and we're going to pick a soft brush with a flow of about maybe, I don't know, almost 80%. And then we're going to zoom in pretty close so that we can get really close to her face here. Now what we're going to do with this layer mask with a black foreground color, we're just going to start taking away right close to her chin. And all we're going to do at this point is, let me drop the flow a little bit more to about there. All we're going to do is we're just going to go around the outline of her face here. I'm not worried about all the excess on the ends, and all this stuff out here, because we're going to take care of that later. I'm going to increase my flow to about 50-ish. And just go right around the face here. And I'm going to increase it just a little bit more. Normally I would have a lower flow, but I know this is going to be probably a longer video, and so I just want to get this done for you guys. So what I'll do in this area is I'll go right on the hairline here. Right on the hairline, go all the way around. And we can go back to the layer mask at any time and make any type of changes that we feel we need. But I'm going to go just around her face first, and then we'll take care of all the rest in just right after we do that. So but I'm just going right around the hairline. And the reason you want a soft brush is because it kind of fares it in to so it's not such a hard edge. That way it makes a nice transition here. So I'm just going around you don't want any on the finger. And almost done. Bear with me here. Almost got it. We're just going to go all the way around the chin area here. And it looks pretty good. I think we got most of it. We'll find out in just a second. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the bottom layer, the background layer, off. And that'll leave us with just our texture. And we can increase our flow to 100%, increase our brush size, and just take it out just like that. Take out all the unwanted texture here, just like that, and then we'll turn the layer back on. And it looks pretty good, and you can also see maybe there's some more texture on this white background that you can take out if you see that. So the next thing we're going to do, we're still going to work in the layer mask here, and I'm going to zoom in. And we're going to work on the eyebrows and the eyes and a little bit on the lips and on the nose, just a little bit, because you don't want all that cracking look on her eyes. So I'm going to reduce the size of my brush, and I'm just going to start going into this space here. I'm just going to go right around the eye, and I'm going to get all of that texture layer off of that space. And I'm actually at 100% right now. I could probably go with 80%. That's good. 100% is okay too. Doing this area. We're actually going to change the flow in a minute when we do the lips and other areas like that. Basically, the flow is how much color you're putting down and how much color you're taking off. So less flow, you're putting less color down. For example, I'm going to do that right now. The eyebrows here, we do want it to show a little bit of the cracking, almost like you can see it underneath the hair. So with the flow, we're going to put the flow down to about, I don't know, about 13%. That's good. And what it's going to do is it's going to lighten it up just a little bit. And the more you go over it, the more it'll take away. But this is just kind of a light coat, just so that it kind of looks like you can still see the crack, but you're looking at it underneath the eyebrow, the hair of the eyebrow here. And so I'm just going over it lightly so you can still see a faint mark of the crack, but it looks like it's underneath or below, the hair. Okay, now we're going to go to the nose area here. And we don't need this, so I'm going to bring the flow up just to about maybe 60%. And we're just going to go right here and the other nostril here. And then also we're going to do the lips because we can see a little bit of her teeth here. And we're going to take that out and leave the flow up to about 60. The brush is fine. And we're just going to take that out. And then also I want this, I don't want as dark of a crack there on her lips. So I'm going to drop the flow to about 20%. And I'm just going to go over it. Actually, let me drop it a little bit more, about 10%. I just want a faint mark of the crack effect on her lips. Okay, so now that we've masked everything and it looks pretty good, we are going to go with this layer checked. We're going to click on our adjustment layer here, and we're going to click on hue and saturation. After we click on hue and saturation, we're going to click on this button here that says colorize. And this is going to change the color for everything. So what we're going to do now is right between these two layers, the hue and saturation layer and this layer named layer 1, we're going to hold our Alt key down on our keyboard, and when we do that, you'll see this little bendy arrow appear. And when that appears, you left click one time, and what that does is it applies the top layer directly and only to the layer right below it. So the hue and saturation is now only affecting layer 1. It's not affecting the background layer at all. So with that said, we're going to move these sliders. We're going to move the hue all the way down, and we're going to mess with this a little bit also a little bit later, but we're just going to try and get a nice looking color here. And for now, that looks pretty good. We're going to go back and we're going to take care of that as well a little bit later to make it a little more refined. And we'll just click this this X here. Now we're going to click back on our texture layer here, and we're going to double click in any blank space to bring up our layer style. And in our layer style, we're going to mess with this blend if area. And I really like to use blend if on a lot of things, like if you're changing hair color and things of that nature. But we're just going to mess with the blend if right now. And so what we're going to do is, you can see, for example, if I move this over, um, the whole slider here moves. But if I hold my Alt key down and I move it, you can see it separates it in half, and that's what we want to do. So we're going to be messing with this layer, and we're going to move this over until it looks pretty good. You can see it'll take some of those. You can see it taking some away and making things look a little bit more sharp. So all you have to do in this point is just kind of play around and get the look that you're going for. And we'll the underlying layer, we'll just take a little bit out of that as well. Move this over just a little bit. And now you just have to kind of adjust these sliders until you get the look you're going for. And I think that would be pretty good. And click OK. Now, we can see things. We're going to go back to our layer mask, because I want to take out some of now that we've done the blend if. There's some things that I kind of want to take out that just don't make sense in this in the image. And what I'm talking about is things like this. So I'm going to drop the flow to about, about let's see, that's fine, 11%. I'm going to increase the size of my brush just a little bit. Now let me just show you what I'm talking about. I want to define this crack right here just a little bit more. And I'll move my flow up just a little bit here, 15%. And so now if I back out, you'll see what I'm talking about. And it just makes it, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to clean up a few of these areas that I think would need it. You don't have to do this. You can, leave this as it is. But I just wanted to show you, that this can be done. And I'm not going to do this I'm not going to go over everything here. But I'm just showing you, that you can clean this up a little bit and, make these cracks. Actually, that looks pretty good like that. I'm just going to take a little bit out of here. And you can go over where, stuff just kind of doesn't make sense. You can take it out like this. And maybe a few lines right here. And I could spend a lot of time on this, taking areas out, leaving them in. But just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to duplicate this layer right here, our texture layer. So we're going to drag it down to this paper looking icon. And when we do that, it's going to change the whole image, and you can see it changed. We need to drag this layer on top of everything. Okay, now to change it back the way it was, we need to, where hue and saturation is, we need to hold our Alt key again until you see the little bendy arrow, and left click one time, and it gets us right back to where we need to be. Now with this top layer, we need to set everything back to default here. So we need to go back to normal, double click on the layer, and set all these handles back the way it was. And it's going to look a little weird right now, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, now that it's all set back to default, we're going to click on, with this layer selected, Control and I, and then we're going to click on Control Shift and U, and that's going to desaturate everything here. Okay, so now we're going to change the blend mode from normal to screen and see what happens. And you see that all these cracks have turned, whoops, sorry, have turned white. Sorry if you hear my cat. Um, Now what we're going to do is we're going to use our arrow keys. You can use your move tool, but I like to use my arrow keys because I want this kind of subtle. And watch what happens if I use my left arrow key here with my move tool selected about 3 or 4 times and maybe down once. And you can see the effect that it's starting to have, and it's beginning to give it a nice shadow. And I really like that, and it looks really nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go with this layer. We're going to double click in this empty space again. And we're going to go back to the blend if. And we're going to move these sliders, and you'll see when I do that. And of course, you're going to hold the Alt key so we can separate these. And you're going to see what's going to happen. And you'll start to see the color begin to come back on the cracks here. And I'm just going to move this over just a little bit more, and then we're also going to move this slider over some more as well. And you can see now it's all coming back, and it's looking nice. And this is the time where you just kind of play with this, and you want a really subtle hint of the white effect here. So we're just going to see where we can get that. And I think that looks pretty good. And we'll click OK. Now we can go back if we want to the hue and saturation, and we can change some of that. You know, well, that looks pretty weird, but you can change some of that to more match, you know, the skin tone or something that's going on here. And I think, you know, that looks pretty good. We'll just leave it at that. Now one last step, and we're almost done. We're going to click on the curves adjustment layer, and we're just going to darken this image up just a little bit here. We're just going to bring it down just a little bit, just like that. And if you wanted to, you can always bring down the opacity. Let's just say 90, and bring this down to about 90 if you want. I'll probably bump it right back up, but just to show you what you can do here, that's fine. And that way it makes the cracks a little less visible, but you know, I'm going to go bold. So there you have it, another successful and simple how-to video. I hope this video has helped you. Please like this video, please subscribe, and comment if you'd like. If you'd like to see other Photoshop videos, visit our website at simplehowtos.com or here on our YouTube channel. Hey, thanks for watching, and have a great day.